think it's going to go a certain way, but actually once you start it and it all falls apart and you have to change on the fly, and you still got to get it done in a certain period of time.
Suzie Fletcher is now 63, and after years of keeping certain details of her personal life private, she has finally broken her silence about her brother. Throughout her life, Suzie has shared an incredibly close bond with her sibling, Steve Fletcher, with whom she's worked alongside on the repair shop. His unwavering support and presence have been a constant in her life, but their bond hasn't always been without its challenges. In a recent revelation, Suzie opened up about the struggles they've faced together, and what she shared has sent shockwaves through her fans. So keep watching as we dive into Suzie's heartfelt message and the truth behind her relationship with Steve. Suzie Fletcher was born into a home where craft and curiosity met. Her mother, a skilled seamstress, could turn any scrap of fabric into something useful, while her father brought home stories of rivers and rocks from his work as a hydrologist. She grew up in the rolling fields of Oxfordshire alongside her older brother, Stevie, who would later become her partner on television. Not long after she learned to speak, her first clear word was horse, a clue to the passion that would guide her life. Yet her earliest years were not easy for her mother, who faced overwhelming feelings after giving birth. In a time when support was scarce, her mother's low spirits and harsh treatments left an imprint on the family. Even so, her parents did their best to shield Suzie and Stevie, sharing laughter over dinner and urging them toward their own dreams. Those first days in a home filled with soft leather scraps and the scent of oil would mark the beginning of her journey toward leatherwork and saddle making. School felt like a maze for Suzie, a place where reading and writing twisted into something hard to decode. She struggled under the weight of undiagnosed dyslexia, and she took to heart the quiet labels of not very bright that some teachers seemed to carry. While other children raced through textbooks, she turned to paper and pencil sketches of horses and saddles, using drawing as a way to make sense of the world around her. Where letters blurred, the grain of leather held clear patterns. It was work she could touch and shape and eventually master. She often retreated to the stables where she fell in love with the steady rhythm of hooves on soft earth, a place where she felt both calm and capable. Her skill with patterns and her growing confidence around animals offered a refuge from the confusion of schoolwork, and by the time she was in her mid-teens, she knew she needed a path that would play to her strengths. When she turned 16, Suzie left home for Cordwainers College in London, a move that felt as grand as it sounded. Cordwainers had a reputation for teaching the fine points of leathercraft, but she found more than just lessons and tools there. Amid routines of hammering, stitching, and dyeing, she discovered the steady beat of focus that she needed. On her first day, she was both nervous and eager as she held a chunk of tanned hide in her hands. Under the watchful eye of experienced tutors, she learned to shape rawhides into the curves and straps of a saddle, each cut guided by a steady hand and a patient eye. She spent hours pulling thread through tough leather, sometimes bleeding from misplaced needles, but never losing her sense that this was where she belonged. By the time she finished her course, she had not only a certificate but a deep respect for the skills passed down through generations of saddlers. Returning to Oxfordshire after her studies, Suzie set up her own workshop in a small outbuilding beside her parents' home. The first few years were lean. She spent mornings repairing worn saddles for local riders and afternoons traveling to country fairs and equestrian shows to sell small leather goods. As her reputation grew, she added new tools, a bench grinder here, a stitching horse there, and began fellowshipping with other craftspeople who shared her dedication. She used her earnings to visit towns with old tanneries and horse fairs, gathering bits of knowledge from seasoned makers and taking notes on the weathered journals she found at flea markets. Over time, commissions arrived from further afield: custom saddles for competition riders, leather repair for vintage car interiors, even a set of equestrian bags for a film crew. Each project deepened her skill and her confidence, and by her late 20s, she was known in equestrian circles as someone who could restore history from bruised leather and bring fresh ideas to classic designs. In her 20s, Suzie met a man who would become her first husband, a fleeting chapter that passed like a whisper. That union ended quietly and left her with a sense of relief more than regret. She returned to her workshop with renewed focus, pouring herself into the grain of leather and the curve of each seat. Then, in her early 30s, she crossed paths with James Allen Baker, an oilfield worker from Colorado with a voice as smooth as the plains he called home. Their first meetings brimmed with laughter and late-night stories, and just 3 months after they met, she packed her bags and moved to his world thousands of miles away. For a moment, it felt as if she had stepped into a new life where love and adventure went hand in hand. Together, they found a house with a small plot of land and room for both horses and dreams. In Colorado, she opened a second workshop near the edge of town, trading local leather hides and the occasional wild idea. Morning light would filter through the big windows as she shaped new pieces, and by afternoon she would ride through dusty fields, the creak of her saddle under her like a trusted friend. She planted rows of lavender and herbs by the workshop door, hoping their sweet scent would calm her clients when they came for repairs. Those first months felt warm and full, but as the seasons turned, she noticed shadows gathering in James's moods. He loved to talk about his plans for a man cave filled with centerfolds and loud displays, even though she had once told him she found that sort of thing crude. When a neighbor friend dropped by, James boasted about his idea in a tone meant to embarrass her. As his laughter rang out, she felt a cold knot form in her chest. The air, once sweet with lavender, tasted of fear. The first sign of real danger came one cool autumn evening. She had quietly shut him out of a room in frustration, the door scraping across the wood floor as it closed. She heard him cry out in pain and then a sound that made her blood run cold. When she peeked around the edge of the door, she saw the raw skin on his toes, and in a roar that shook the walls, he set upon her with hands coiled like steel springs. She ran without thinking, only to find herself backed into a corner. He seized her throat with a forearm, then hoisted her until her feet dangled off the ground. All she could think was that any second would be her last. His breath came in heavy bursts as she clawed at his arm, eyes tearing, mind racing. After a moment that felt like hours, he released her, stumbling back as if shocked by what he'd done. She crumpled to the floor, gasping for air, her world narrowed to the sound of her own heartbeat. Her days after that were tapestries woven with anxiety and relief. She learned to hide bruises beneath long sleeves and to craft excuses when questioned by friends. Some afternoons she would slip into the workshop and bury herself in stitching, the familiar motions a balm for her mind. Other nights she lay awake listening for his steps, ready to dart from the bed if he moved too close. She told herself she could handle it, that it would pass, that his anger was just a phase. But the episodes grew more frequent, each one ringing more alarms in her head. She kept her own counsel, fearing that any show of weakness would bring down on her another wave of rage. Her brother Stevie called often, checking in, but she felt too ashamed to confide in him. Looking back now, she wishes she had. In the end, it was illness rather than law that freed her. In 2013, James was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The news came in a hushed phone call and landed like a crosswind, leaving both of them off balance. He carried the disease in silence, and she only learned of the diagnosis days before his passing. During his final weeks, he asked her if he had done more harm than good, and she lied gently, telling him that they had shared moments of happiness too. Then he died, leaving her alone in a strange land where every room held memories of fear and laughter in equal measure. She stayed on for a while, finishing the lavender rows she had started, but the land no longer felt like home. When the workshop rent came due, she closed its doors, packed her tools, and boarded a plane back to England with nothing but the saddle she had made herself. On returning to Oxfordshire, she found that the work she loved was waiting for her more than ever. She reopened her workshop in a rented barn close to her parents' home, turning her pain into purpose. She spent mornings in the stall carving new molds and afternoons dreaming up designs for bridles and boots. It was during this time that she received a call from the producers of The Repair Shop, a BBC series where experts restore treasured items. They had noticed her work through Steve, who was already a specialist in horology on the show. They asked her to join them for the second season as the resident leather and saddle expert. At first, she said no. The thought of cameras and strangers felt too exposed, but when she met the team, she found their kindness and curiosity to be a fresh breeze. Before long, she agreed. Filming the repair shop brought a rhythm to her days that she had long missed. She would arrive early to set up her tools, the familiar weight of hammer and needle comforting in her hand. While the client told the story behind a worn leather trunk or a battered riding crop, she listened and stitched and polished, losing herself in the fine grain of the hide. As cameras rolled, she felt a sense of trust build between her and the guests. They would watch her work, and she would share memories of how she had learned each skill from her tutors. Watching Steve at work with his clock faces and cogs, she felt a deep connection. Together, they repaired thin threads of memory, mending both leather and hearts. The show's crew became a new circle of trust, offering laughter when days ran long and quiet words when she needed a steady hand. After her episodes aired, messages poured in. Viewers shared their own stories of fear and healing, describing how her calm voice and steady craft gave them hope. Some wrote about learning to read late, others about escaping unhealthy relationships. Her inbox swelled with requests for advice, and she began speaking out about dyslexia and domestic abuse, using her experience to help others find a path forward. She worked with a local charity to hold leatherwork workshops for survivors, teaching the same stitches and knots that had been her lifeline. Each day, she saw how a piece of leather could carry more than weight. It could carry memory, strength, and a reminder that it was possible to remake one's story. In 2023, she published her memoir, The Sun Over Mountains, a title she chose to honor both the high points of her life and the dark valleys she had climbed through. Writing the book took months of early mornings and late nights, as she sifted through journals and old letters to bring her younger self back to the page. She found it hard to describe that moment when a stranger's kindness on the repair shop set her on a new course, but once she did, she realized how much she had shifted. Reviewers praised her honest style, the simple way she used her own story to lift someone else's. She held book readings in local libraries and equestrian centers, reading passages about her first saddle and her first real taste of fear. Each event reminded her that truth, spoken plainly, could be a bridge between strangers. Through it all, her bond with Stevie remained at the heart of her journey. They would walk through the fields where they once played as children, talking about the work they shared and the losses they had weathered. When she felt low, he was there with a mug of tea and a joke about her stubborn streak. When he faced challenges, she was there with a listening ear and a map of his own strengths. Their childhood home became the hub for their growing family, nieces and nephews who gathered under the big oaks in summer, hearing stories of leather and clocks and the wild plans their aunt and uncle once made. Suzie Fletcher has often talked about her strong connection with her brother, Steve Fletcher, and how important he is in her life. Their bond, built on shared experiences and mutual support, has been a foundation for both of them, especially as they face challenges together. Suzie and Steve grew up in Oxfordshire, in a family where working with your hands was a big part of life. Their father was a clockmaker, and they spent a lot of time in his workshop. Steve became an expert in clock repair, while Suzie focused on leatherwork and saddle making. Even though they specialized in different things, they always worked together and shared a close relationship. Suzie often describes Steve as her rock, someone she can always rely on for support. She says he's always been there for her, offering advice when needed and keeping her confidence. One of the ways their bond has been tested and strengthened is through their work on the repair shop. Suzie joined the show after Steve encouraged her to do so, even though she was initially unsure. Suzie has since said that joining the show has been one of the best things to happen to her. Not only did it give her the chance to showcase her skills, but it also allowed her to work closely with Steve, strengthening their already close relationship. They've also been there for each other through some personal struggles. Suzie's marriage to James Allen Baker was difficult, and she faced a lot of hardship. Steve was always there for her, offering support when she needed it most. After James's sudden death in 2013, Suzie returned to the UK, and Steve helped her through the grief. Suzie has said that her brother's support during this time was vital, showing how much she can rely on him. Despite the challenges, Suzie and Steve's relationship has remained strong. Suzie once talked about how her late husband tried to create a rift between her and Steve by lying about Steve's health. The lie was part of a larger pattern of control, but Suzie didn't believe it because of her deep trust in her brother. When she spoke to Steve and found out he was fine, she felt relieved and knew that her connection with him was solid. Looking back on their relationship, Suzie has said that family is incredibly important to her, and she feels especially lucky to have such a close bond with Steve. She's also mentioned that working with him on the repair shop feels less like a job and more like spending time with family. Their shared passion for restoring objects and their support for one another have made their sibling relationship something they both cherish. Through the highs and lows, Suzie and Steve Fletcher have shown how strong family bonds can be. Their relationship is a perfect example of how support, trust, and respect can make a family connection last, no matter what life throws their way. Their fans also see and admire the love and respect they share, both on and off screen. Today, Suzie's workshop stands on the edge of a farm that she rents with a small herd of horses. Mornings begin with brushing down each mare and stallion, feeling the warmth through their coats as they welcome her touch. She works through stacks of leather hides that arrive from tanneries in England and Europe, each one a fresh canvas for a saddle, a belt, or a bag. She still carries the same tools she used at cordwainers, a wooden mallet, a runner stitch awl, and a curved needle, but she has learned how to adapt to each for new patterns and demands. Clients come from across the country, some seeking repairs on family heirlooms, others looking for custom pieces to mark their own journeys. Evenings find her curled up with her memoir or a cup of tea on her back porch, the horses grazing nearby. She thinks about the years she spent hiding scars and the time she felt too small to speak. She remembers the roar of anger that almost passed as sudden death and the quiet kindness that pulled her back. She gives thanks for her parents' quiet support and for the craft that carried her from one side of the world to the other. She looks forward to new episodes of The Repair Shop, new chapters of her life that await beyond the next sunrise. In the soft light of dusk, she brushes a hand across a saddle she is restoring, feeling the smooth leather and the promise that no matter what, she can always shape her own path. Thanks for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel for more content like this.